Well, hello everyone, welcome back to Electrified Outdoors. Today we're here with the Silverado EV RST. This is the first edition, so it's a 2024. No media cars here, folks. I'm gonna tell you my honest opinion of what I love and hate about the Chevrolet Silverado EV. But first, if you're new here, my name is Ken and I make videos about living and adventuring with electric vehicles, specifically electric trucks. And I like to do it outdoors, go figure. So if that interests you, go ahead and click on subscribe. And when you click subscribe, hit that notification bell and you'll get notified anytime we add new content. All right, folks, I'm gonna start out with the things that I like about the Silverado EV, and then we'll go into the things that I don't really like so much and that I think Chevrolet and GM could do a little bit better. A lot of these same things are gonna apply to the sister truck, which is the GMC Sierra EV as well. So if you're thinking about a Sierra instead of a Silverado, this video will also help you as well. Same exact truck, a little bit different interior appointments, a little bit different wheels, a little bit different front end, otherwise exactly the same truck. So the first thing I'm sure is on everyone's mind about the Silverado EV when they're considering it is the driving range. So let's go ahead after nearly 7 months of ownership and driving, and looks like I have 7,920 miles on it, so about 8,000 miles at the time of this recording, and see what the predicted range is at 100% state of charge. Okay, folks, not sure how well you can see this, but as you can see here, now this truck came from the factory with a rated range of 440 miles. This is the max battery, the largest battery that General Motors offers in these trucks. 440 miles. I did update all of the modules in this truck not too long ago. So all the modules in this truck have the latest software available from GM. On a 100% charge, my predicted range is 475 miles. That's a tremendous amount of range. That is one of the major things that I love about the Silverado EV. Why do I love it, you ask? Well, if you're towing things, which is what my wife and I are going to be doing, I'll put a picture up of our new travel trailer on the screen for you. We got an excellent deal on it from Beckley's RV in Thurmont, Maryland. I'll put a link to them down in the video description. If you go up there, ask for Chuck Liller, and he'll be able to take care of all your RV needs. But in any event, that's why we got the truck. Because let's face it, folks, nobody is going to drive 475 miles in one go. But when you're towing, you know your range is about at least cut in half. So having all that range in a truck like this is critical if you're going to be towing. And I think that's why a lot of folks are going to go for this max battery. So gotta be the range. So the next thing on the list, folks, is gotta be the maneuverability for its size. Now with the RST here, which by the way, is being discontinued for the 2026 model year. So if you want all the goodies that are on the RST, you're gonna have to go with the GMC Sierra EV Denali Max. They will have the max battery and things like that. I'll put some more information on that down in the video description. But the maneuverability for its size, and I'll show you the turning and all that in a moment, the maneuverability for its size with the four-wheel steering is absolutely excellent. I did drive the work truck last November, and believe it or not, even without the four-wheel steering, it does do a very good job, but the four-wheel steering makes this thing a breeze to make U-turns and things like that. It also helps a lot with backing your trailer, and when you're towing a trailer, it really helps with maneuverability. Let's take a look and see how this thing handles. Now the next thing on my list of likes is going to be the infotainment screens. Now this is going to be very subjective as far as whether you like the Silverado EV or the Sierra EV. because the Sierra EV has the portrait type screen that's in the center, and the Silverado EV here has the more landscape type setup. So let's just take a quick look at it. Now we can see that we have a driver's display over here. Now this is customizable, and you can choose all different types of things to be displayed up here. The one thing that I wish it was better is being able to cycle through some things here. Like for example, right now it shows my energy efficiency on the left, and it shows my audio on the right. I wish you could cycle through those. And when you see those lines there, it would appear that you could cycle through them. However, you cannot. You have to actually go through the main screen over here and configure that to change what's displayed on this screen. But when we go in here, we can see that this is going to be Google's Android Automotive Operating System. It's an excellent system. However, there's two big things missing right now. That's going to be also in my dislikes part of this video, so a little bit of a spoiler there. No Android Auto, no Apple CarPlay, and as of the time of this recording, no video apps. That is supposed to be coming soon. I'm hoping it comes sooner rather than later, because having video and entertainment options is really important when you're stopped charging and things like that, even if due to the fast charging, you're not going to be stopped for that long. But we can see we have a lot of different configurability here. We have driving modes. If I go into my mode, and if you're really interested in digging deeper into the infotainment, I'll link to my video on the infotainment system that I did a while back, and that takes a super deep dive into all the features and functions of the GM electric vehicle infotainment system. But we have tons of different drive modes. We can manage our charging here. We have a lot of different options there. We do have a Google Play Store because this is the Android Automotive System. And we can, let's just say, explore all apps. You can see we have quite a few different apps here, but unfortunately we don't have any video apps right now. We do have great cameras. That's something that GM is very good at. So we have our standard cameras, our overhead cameras. Okay. If I go to standard, I can switch between the front, the rear. This will show me the bed. And if I go to overhead, I can see all this stuff. I can even look at my hitch. So extremely useful if you're towing, to be able to look at your hitch and see what your hitch is doing there. We can look at the sides. So if you're parallel parking, you can look at the sides there. Obviously, you have the overhead view and the standard view. Front, very similar. We have an overhead view of the front, and we can also view the sides as well. So really cool camera functions. It does have a lot of connectivity with your phone, and you can see we have vehicle status in here. We have an energy screen. It'll tell us the tire pressure, trip meter, and so on and so forth. So one of my likes in here is the way these screens are laid out and all the functions and features that GM offers, with some caveats, which I'll get into later on. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges for truck owners for the longest time was, where do you store things? You do have that big bed back there, and if you put a tonneau cover on it, you do get some covered storage, but there's still a number of challenges that come along with that. So what does GM give you with their electric trucks that you're not going to get anywhere else? Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and open the front trunk here. So as we look into the front trunk here, we can see that this is a pretty large space. We have about 10.8 cubic feet of storage there. We also have a power outlet. This is the RST, so we don't have any spare. We have a tire inflator kit back there. Cup holder, more cup holder over here, kind of a cup holder there. And if you lift this up, this mat, I have a link down in the video description to this all-weather mat here. But if we lift up the mat there, we can see that we also have a drain in the bottom there. So if you have things in here that are wet and messy, you can drain that water out quickly and easily. Now, as we slip into the back seat here, this vehicle comes with the Midgate. Now, I do have some junk back here, so the seat's not gonna go all the way up, but this seat goes up, this seat goes up, these seats come down, the glass comes out, and this whole thing folds down, and it opens up the entire bed, and you have a total of 10 foot of usable bed capacity there with that down. With it up, 5 foot 11 inches. So the Midgate is a huge plus. And we'll slip around here to the back of the RST here. And I'm gonna go ahead and double tap on my key fob, and we get access to the bed. Now, if I look up in the bed here, I'm gonna lift up the hard tonneau cover here just so we can see in. And we have the power outlets. I showed those in my work truck review and the RST review. 30 amps, and you can also get another accessory that'll give you some additional power from the charge port for a total of 9.6 kilowatt. But with the vehicle, no accessory required, 7.2 kilowatt of onboard power. This is the RST, so we also have the Midgate system, which drops down. If you've seen reviews, you've seen this a million times, and this folds down, okay? And you can step up in there. I have used this numerous times to get up into and out of the bed. Now, sometimes I call this a Midgate. It's actually called the Flex Gate. The Midgate is where the back folds down and allows you to extend the bed. This is the Flex Gate here. But the cool thing about the Flex Gate being down, obviously you can step up into the bed easier when you have that down. But if you're trying to access things that are in the bed, you can get up closer. And I can just about reach these plugs. And it's a much harder reach with that up. So the storage, the flexibility offered by the Midgate and the Flex Gate tailgate there are a huge reason why I went with the Silverado EV, and it's definitely one of the 10 things that I love about the truck. All right, everyone, so let's take a little ride here. I'm kind of in a little bit of an off-road situation. The next item I want to talk about is how smooth and quiet the truck is. Now, is it bank vault silent? No, it's not bank vault silent, but it's very, very quiet and it's extremely smooth. I tell everyone this thing drives like a Cadillac, and it really does. It handles the bumps very well. I mean, here, that's a pretty big dip right there. Especially when you get this truck out on the highway, it just drives beautifully. And so that's gonna be high on my list for things that I really like about the truck, is how smooth and how quiet it rides. This truck drives extremely smooth. And it's not so smooth that it feels numb. It's the right amount of smooth and the right amount of road feel to me. And I think that's a hard balance to strike, but I think GM has really nailed it on this one. The next thing I want to talk about, folks, is the regen. And this may be a downside to some, but I think with an electric truck, the regen is extremely important. Because you have a very inefficient vehicle, not really inefficient for the size that it is, but inefficient when you compare it to a car. You have an inefficient vehicle, it's a big truck. You need to be able to recapture a lot of that energy. And the regen in this truck does a really good job of doing that. You can completely turn it off, which I know some of our viewers that are coming from gas trucks may want to do, but I recommend you try to get used to the regen, because that's going to extend your range, because when you let off the accelerator, it's going to slow down and it's going to recapture a lot of that energy, and it's going to put it back into your battery so you can drive further. So we're just going to test out the regen here. I'm doing about 45 miles an hour. Doing about 45 miles an hour, and I'm just going to let completely off the accelerator. That was about 185 kilowatt of regen, and it brought me all the way down to a stop. Very strong. Of course, this is in the max setting. You can turn that down and really turn the one pedal drive completely off. But again, I don't recommend you turn it off because it's going to significantly reduce your range when you do that, because you're no longer going to be capturing that energy. But just a very smooth riding truck, very enjoyable. Now, I'm coming from a Rivian R1T, and a lot of you have probably seen my content on the Rivian R1T. This is not going to be too comparable handling-wise to the Rivian R1T. This is a much heavier truck. It's quite a bit slower. If you call 4 seconds 0 to 60 slow, it's quite a bit slower, and it doesn't have the instant neck braking torque. Another one of the things I love about the Silverado EV is its charging speed. Now, with the extended range battery, you're going to get up to 300 kilowatts of fast charging performance. And if you have the max battery, which is what we have in here, the 24 module battery, you're going to get up to 350 kilowatts of fast charging. Now, I'll show you a video here in a second, but that 350 kilowatts of fast charging is enough to recharge the Silverado EV from 10% to 80% in 38 minutes. That is impressive. So if you haven't seen my video on the charging test, I'll link to that down below, and I'll also show a short clip right now. We're at a new GM charger, so I'm going to go out and try to activate this. Let me show you real quick. I have exactly 10% charge left. So I have exactly 10%, and I'm actually going to set this to, let's close this. It's bugging me to charge up, which I'm at a charger, so I'm going to set this to 80%. So this will stop charging right at 80%. So let's go out and try to activate the charger and see what kind of speed we get. Hey, now that's what I'm talking about. 344 kilowatt. It is really cold out there, but I'm going to try to get you out there and show you the charger. So we're charging at 717 miles per hour, 38 minutes, 10 to 80%. Totally amazed by this Silverado EV. Folks, another item on my like list is the towing capability. So, extended range battery, 12,500 pounds of towing capacity, max range battery, 10,000 pounds. And the reason for that is the max range battery is quite a bit heavier than the extended range battery, so you lose a little bit of towing capacity there. But the towing capacity is the thing I really love about this truck, because one of the major reasons why you need all that range, as I said earlier, is because when you tow, you lose at least half of that range. It's very important, folks, to have the trifecta. And what is the trifecta, you ask? It's range, towing capacity, and charging speed. Those are all the things that are going to make towing with an EV much, much easier and much, much more tolerable. If you watched any of my towing videos, I'll link them down below, but with the Rivian, it has a much smaller battery, so towing road trips were a significant challenge in that vehicle. And I'm expecting much better performance out of this Silverado EV with this large battery. So another thing I like about the Silverado EV is that it's very easy to drive for its size. We talked about the maneuverability, but it also handles very well. This truck weighs about 8,500 pounds. And with the four-wheel steering and the big 24-inch wheels and tires, you can really carve up some back roads. But you have to be careful. You might get yourself in trouble if you go too fast. Very, very smooth as well. I don't have it in the wide open watts mode. So with the LT and the RST, without the wide open watts mode, you have about 645 horsepower available. The RST, which again is going away for the 2026 model year, the RST has that wide open watts, and when you hit that, That's going to give you 760 horsepower and about 785 pound-feet of torque. And it'll also give you some engine sounds. Now, I'm not crazy about the engine sounds, but if you're coming from an ICE truck and you like the sound of an engine, then you can enable the engine sounds, and it'll give you some fake engine sounds that'll be very familiar to you if you're coming from an ICE truck. So one of the really big benefits to driving an electric truck, folks, is the maintenance or lack thereof. You don't have any of the maintenance that you have on a traditional ICE truck or vehicle. So there's no oil changes, no transmission fluid changes. If you're coming from a four-wheel drive, there's no differentials or transfer case to worry about. So a lot less maintenance. The only real thing you have to worry about in the Silverado EV here is wiper blades, tires, windshield washer fluid, and every couple years you're going to want to flush your brake fluid, and about once a year you're going to want to make sure the calipers are lubricated. Other than that, not really a whole lot of maintenance on a truck like this, and that saves you a huge amount of money. Now, in addition to the maintenance, the Silverado EV gets the equivalent of 63 miles per gallon. Now, if you cut that in half when you're towing, you're still getting the equivalent of 30 miles to the gallon when you're towing a trailer, which is just amazing. You're not going to get anywhere near that in an internal combustion vehicle. You won't even get near 20 miles to the gallon in an internal combustion truck. So this truck is really an amazing truck for that reason. Very little maintenance, very little fueling costs. The only time I would caution folks not to get one of these trucks is if you don't have a place to charge it, either at home or at the office. If you have to rely on public charging 100% of the time, it's at least 3 times more expensive than charging at home or at work. And you will have to wait around for it to charge. As to where if you're charging at home or at work, you plug it in when you get home, just like your cell phone, or if you're doing it at the office, you plug in when you get to the office every day, and either when you leave home or leave the office, you're gonna have a full tank. Okay, folks, so now I'm gonna start getting into the things that are not so great about the Silverado EV, and really the Sierra EV as well. And the number one thing I have to say, as soon as I start thinking about things that are not as good, is the price tag. I know that's going to be a turnoff to a lot of people. So the price tag on this truck, the MSRP, was right around $97,000. And on the Sierra EV Denali Max, we're looking at a starting price of over $100,000. And so I know that's going to turn a lot of folks off right away. But there's a caveat to this. The LT with the extended range battery is available with the tax credit, which at the time of this recording is still in effect. Don't know how long that's going to last with the current administration, but it is still in effect. And with that, the cost comes down significantly. So the LT is under $80,000. If you go for the max battery, you do go above that. But you can have versions of this truck for well under $70,000 after you negotiate a little bit with your dealer. And the work truck, a lot of the work trucks that I've seen now are in the 60s, in the low 60s. A tremendous value for this truck. Tremendous, tremendous value. So while it is a negative that the price of these trucks can get very high, very fast, but General Motors has done a really good job of giving us a lot of different trim options. So there's a version of this truck that can suit everyone's budget, which I think is important. Now I have this down as a dislike, but it's not really the truck's fault. But installing a charger at home can get kind of pricey depending on where your electrical panel is located. I'll link to a video that I did a while back showing you the charging setup at our house where I actually have 2 Tesla chargers. But if you want the GM power shift charger, which will charge this truck at its maximum speed, which is 80 amps, you may need to have significant electrical service upgrades. If you have a 200 amp service, it's probably not going to be enough because you're going to need a 100 amp circuit to run it. But I have a 48 amp charger, and I found that's still more than enough to charge the truck overnight. So this could go either way. One thing I tell everyone to make sure you do, if you haven't bought this truck yet and are considering it, you're going to want to contact an electrician and check into the cost of installing a charger at your home based on your specific location where you're going to put the charger and where your panel is located. Those are the 2 main things that are going to play into the price. The next thing on my list of not so great things is the charging. Now, I mentioned in my list of likes that the Silverado EV and Sierra EV have extremely fast charging speeds. Well, that comes with a caveat as well. That requires a charger that's capable of delivering that kind of speed, and those are 800 volt chargers. Now, the most widely available chargers out there right now are Tesla superchargers. The majority of Tesla superchargers do not support 800 volt at this time. They only support 400 volt. And if you've watched some of my previous Silverado EV videos, you'll notice that when I was at Tesla, the charging speed maxes out at 180 kilowatt, so about half of the speed. This results in much longer charging sessions. So a lot of the chargers that are out there right now are not going to be capable of delivering the speed that the truck is capable of. That's the bad news. The good news is the charging network and charging infrastructure is going to improve. So the way it is right now is the worst it's ever going to be, because as time goes on, the charging network operators are going to add more and more 800 volt stations. Because believe it or not, they don't want you having to be there any longer than you have to charge either, because the longer you're there charging your vehicle, the less time they can have somebody else there charging their vehicle. The next thing on my list of dislikes, and it's not really the truck's fault on this, it's kind of the learning curve. So this isn't my first EV. I'm sure most of you probably already know that. But if this is somebody's first EV, there is a learning curve. The number one thing that folks tell me is hard for them to learn is the regenerative braking, or the one pedal driving. They don't like the sensation of letting off the accelerator and having the vehicle abruptly slow down. So there's a learning curve there. The other learning curve is, and even though it is here in 2025, road trips, long road trips, still require a little bit of advanced planning, especially if you're towing. But in general, they require a little bit of advanced planning. You're going to want to make sure you select chargers that have amenities around them and that are available and working properly. I did a video a while back on road trip planning. I'll link that down below. You're definitely going to want to watch that. A better route planner and PlugShare are 2 of the really good tools that I use for planning out my road trips. And you don't necessarily need to plan them because the navigation will tell you where to stop, but it's much less stressful if you plan ahead before you set out on your road trip. The next thing on my list of dislikes is a really strong one, actually. And I don't know why GM is doing this. Well, I do know why, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me still. GM has removed Android Auto and Apple CarPlay capability from their electric vehicles. And I believe there's maybe a couple of them you can still get it here in 2025, but slowly but surely they're removing it from all their electric vehicles. And that problem is not that they're removing it. The problem is they're removing it without a replacement for the functionality. For example, the texting, I still haven't been able to figure out the texting in the Silverado EV here. And I've had it for close to 7 months now. And I'm fairly tech savvy, so if I can't figure out how to get it working, at least comparable to what CarPlay and Android Auto can provide, then the average person buying an electric truck is not going to be able to figure it out either. I really, really wish GM, and for that matter, Tesla and Rivian would rethink their position on it as well. Why reinvent the wheel when CarPlay and Android Auto are already there and already provide a great feature set? And with that said, even if you want to reinvent the wheel first before you remove it. Please. So that's a huge one. The lack of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay just really ticks me off. I just can't stand that they're doing that. At first it was Tesla, Rivian never had it, and now GM is removing it. And I just think it's really, really silly. The next thing on my list of dislikes is, and this kind of goes along with the territory of owning a full-size truck, is the size of the truck and the weight of the truck. So the truck handles extremely well, as I said before, for what it is. But you're not going to be throwing this around like you can a Rivian or a Tesla. Once you start reaching the truck's limits, you will know it. But again, it handles good for what it is, but it is not a sports truck. So if you want a sports truck, you're better off with an R1T than you're going to be with this full-size Silverado. The other place where it's going to be a challenge is obviously parking and navigating tight city streets. That's going to be more of a challenge. So if you're coming from a smaller vehicle, that may be an issue. If you already own a full-size truck, I don't think the size is going to be that much of a deal breaker for you. The next item on my dislikes list is going to have to do with the interior materials. And I don't necessarily dislike them, but I think in this price range where we're approaching six figures, I do expect a more upscale interior. The GMC Sierra EV is a little bit better in this department, and the interior materials are a little bit nicer than the Chevy, but still on both of them I would expect just a little bit better for that nearly six-figure price tag. So the next item on my dislikes list, and it's, again, this is not really something I dislike about the truck, but I think if you're coming from an internal combustion truck, again, there's going to be a lot of things that are different. If you like that engine noise, if you like the feeling of that internal combustion engine, you're not going to have that in an electric truck. It's a totally different feeling. You do have that pedestrian noise to let people know that you're there, because the truck is basically silent. You do have that pedestrian noise, which a lot of people hate because it's kind of loud, but it's not going to be the same sensation as driving an internal combustion truck. Again, not the truck's fault, but these are all things you're going to have to think about if you've never driven an EV before and you're coming from an internal combustion truck and getting into a Silverado or Sierra EV. Now I'm going to start getting into the things that I am a little concerned about. Well, at least one thing that I'm a little concerned about, and that's the battery warranty. So with Tesla, they have a fairly good battery warranty. I believe theirs is about 120,000 miles. Rivian, I think theirs is 150,000 miles. With GM, they have the minimum amount of warranty that's required by the federal government, which is 8 years or 100,000 miles. And I say it's concerning because everyone that I talk to, their number one concern about going with an electric vehicle or an electric truck is the battery. How long is the battery going to last? Am I going to have to replace the battery? Is replacing the battery going to cost me, $20,000? And the battery is obviously a huge concern for anyone considering an electric vehicle. And I think one of the ways you ease that concern is by offering a really, really good warranty. But GM's warranty at only 100,000 miles is not good enough, in my opinion. And with this truck, especially with the one I'm driving with a huge 205 kilowatt hour battery, you don't want to get the bill for replacing this battery. Now again, I'm gonna put a caveat in here. I do believe in the next 5 to 10 years, you're gonna see a lot more battery repair. So I mentioned this is a 24 module battery. It's not really that difficult, relatively speaking, to determine when you have a battery failure or battery cell failure, which module that failing cell is in. And what you do is replace that module. Or you can replace the battery pack with a refurbished pack and get a core refund on the amount of good cells that are in the pack that was removed from your vehicle. So there's a lot of things that have to change and catch up, but these are all basically hindrances to the adoption of electric vehicles, and specifically electric trucks, because they have much larger batteries, and the larger batteries are much more expensive to replace. And we've come down to the end, and if you're still watching, thank you guys so much for watching. But the last thing I want to say is on my dislikes or areas of concern. Let's not say dislikes, let's say areas of concern on the Silverado and Sierra EV is going to be the long-term reliability. Now, granted, we're going into the third model year, so the 2026 model year for the Silverado EV. But these trucks have really only been getting delivered to customers for about a year. It'll be 13 months and a few days that these vehicles have been getting delivered to customers. So the long-term reliability of these trucks is relatively unknown. Also going along with that long-term reliability is time to repair, which is going to be a big concern for a lot of truck buyers. Because the trucks are so new and the parts are in relatively short supply, if you do need a repair, it's likely to take more time. We've been through this with Rivian. I complained about Rivian service and the body work that we had to get done on my wife's R1S, how long that took. The Silverado is going to require some patience until more of these get on the road and there's more parts availability. I have seen stories online of folks having their truck in the shop for 2 months waiting on some parts. Some folks longer, some folks shorter, but it is going to take longer when you have something that's brand new to the market. So repair time, parts availability, and long-term reliability are all going to be question marks, and you need to be aware of the risks that you're taking when you buy something that's so new. Now, with that said, and knocking on wood, I haven't had any trouble with my Silverado EV RST. I've got about 8,000 miles on it now, and it continues to drive beautifully. It runs beautifully. I've had no real issues with it. I did have an issue with the window seals getting pinched. That happened on my RST here, and it also happened on the work truck. So that is a common problem. Simple fix, they just replace the window seal. But other than that, I mean, nothing really has gone wrong with this truck. I've been very, very happy with it, and I'm really looking forward to towing with it and seeing how she does on a long road trip. What do you guys think of the Silverado EV? Are you planning to purchase one? Let us know down in the comments section. As always, folks, remember to like. It does help others find our content just a little bit easier on YouTube. Click on subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming content. Hug the people you love every chance you get, and we'll see you next time.